Just when you thought the geopolitical scene was chaotic enough, Venezuela is looking to annex a huge chunk of Guyana in what could be the latest threat to global stability. The threat hasn't come out of nowhere. Venezuela has long claimed that it is the rightful owner of Essequibo, a 160,000 square meter chunk of Guyana, with the claim going back over a century. But now those tensions that have simmered for decades are coming to a boil. And if Nicolas Maduro, the president of Venezuela, has his way, Guyana will lose about 2/3 of its territory as quickly as he can make it happen. So annexation is in the cards for Guyana. However, there's obviously a question to ask here: why now? After all, Venezuelans have long claimed that land is theirs, so why has Maduro waited until now, with the world in so much conflict, to potentially launch a military offensive? To find the answer, we need to dig into the nature of Venezuela's claim and look beyond the issue of mere territory to find the true reasons why Maduro wants to get his hands on Essequibo. But first, come with us on a little trip to 1814. In that year, Venezuela acquired what was then known as British Guyana, now Guyana, in a treaty signed with the Netherlands. But that treaty had an issue. It didn't define a western border for the territory, leaving the British free to essentially decide their own. They did that with the help of Robert Herman Schomburgk, a German-born explorer and surveyor who had close ties to Britain. Schomburgk spent several years on his survey, eventually establishing what came to be known as the Schomburgk Line in 1835. That line extended the western border of British Guyana by about 30,000 square miles, giving Britain a self-made claim to territory that it may not have actually owned. Naturally, that was going to cause problems. In 1811, Venezuela claimed independence from Spain, setting itself up as a republic that bordered British Guyana. The two burgeoning territories coexisted fairly peacefully until the British made claims on that extra land beyond the accepted border, prompting Venezuela to dispute the Schomburgk Line in 1841. It argued that the true border was established when it achieved independence from Spain. Not only did the Schomburgk Line cross into its territory, but it went far past the Essequibo River, which lay about 2/3 into British Guyana. Of course, the British were having none of that, and when gold was discovered near the Schomburgk Line, Britain extended its territory even further, claiming that a further patch of land extending 33,000 square miles west of the Schomburgk Line was part of British Guyana too, and that just happened to be the land in which gold had been discovered. Venezuela responded by appealing to the United States to help it take back the territory that it believed it rightfully owned in 1876. The U.S. response? Nothing. Well, not totally nothing. It did at least express concern, but it wasn't until 1895 that the then Secretary of State, Richard Olney, invoked the Monroe Doctrine while writing a letter to British Prime Minister Lord Salisbury. That note said that the border matter needed to go to arbitration. Salisbury said the Monroe Doctrine, which holds that any political act that could affect the United States is seen as potentially hostile, was invalid, and the media of the day was soon abuzz with claims that America and Britain would soon be at war. That, of course, did not happen. Already struggling under the weight of its global empire, Britain decided that picking a fight in American territory was ill-advised. It submitted to arbitration, and Venezuela celebrated until the results came in. British Guyana's border would be the Schomburgk Line, meaning that Venezuela clawed back the gold-rich land the Brits tried to obtain, but still didn't have an official claim to the territory up to the Essequibo River. In the century or so since, Venezuela has consistently argued that it owns the land. Since its independence from Britain, during which it claimed all of the land that was previously British Guyana, Guyana has claimed that it's the rightful owner. There's been a whole lot of talking with no action taking place on either side. Enter Nicolas Maduro. In 2013, Maduro claimed the Venezuelan presidency after winning a special election. 2 years later, he issued an official decree in which he claimed Venezuelan sovereignty over the disputed Essequibo region, as well as the territorial waters surrounding it. Nothing came of that claim at the time, with Maduro backing off when he was summoned by the former Guyanese Minister of Foreign Affairs, Carl Greenidge, to explain his actions. But he'd made his intentions known, both with the decree and in his rhetoric in the run-up to the election. He's also refused to let the issue die. While he might not have taken direct action on his 2015 decree, he has constantly claimed that Essequibo is Venezuelan territory. He's even appeared on television holding a revised map of South America that depicts Venezuela's borders as being much larger than they actually are. Of course, Essequibo, along with some surrounding territory, is marked off on his map. Still, that doesn't answer the question of why now. Maduro made this decree in 2015, and Venezuela has been claiming ownership of the territory for about 2 centuries. The difference between all of those historical claims and Venezuela's claim now is simple. Maduro claims to have the votes in favor of the annexation of Essequibo. On December 3rd, Maduro held a referendum that was intended to reinforce his position that Venezuela owns the disputed land. Most reports claim that this election saw an extremely poor turnout. The Guardian even went so far as to claim that Guyana's government could breathe a sigh of relief because the turnout was so underwhelming that it appeared the referendum had backfired spectacularly in Maduro's face. But that's not what Maduro claims. He claimed the referendum was a total success, stating that 95% of the country supports his plan to, quote, reclaim the territory through annexation. According to The Guardian, analysts are already claiming that the voter turnout numbers coming out of Caracas have been wildly inflated, perhaps to the point where the referendum may well as not have happened at all. Maduro was going to use it as a justification for his invasion anyway, and given the disparity between the claimed turnout and what eyes on the ground saw, he's willing to lie and cheat so that he can use the supposed success of his referendum as a springboard into Guyana. Appearing on TV following the vote, Maduro again held up his map of the new Venezuela and talked about the drafting of a new law that would officially recognize Essequibo as a Venezuelan state. Tellingly, he also ordered Venezuela's national oil company, PDVSA, to start exploring the territory for oil. Therein we see the real reason why Maduro is preparing to annex Essequibo. Much like when the British tried to claim territory beyond the Schomberg Line when it discovered that there was gold to be found, Maduro has accelerated his plans to take Essequibo because that region is believed to be rich in oil. Since 2015, uncoincidentally the same year Maduro issued his original decree, several oil companies have been surveying the Essequibo territory. They discovered 46 oil fields, with 4 being found in 2023 alone. According to Forbes, these fields might hold over 11 billion barrels of oil. That would be a huge boon for Guyana's population, which would become richer than the UAE and Kuwait if it's able to exploit those massive oil fields. Guyana is sitting on a winning lottery ticket, and Essequibo is the key to cashing it in. Maduro knows this, which is why he wants that territory so badly. But hold on a second. You might be thinking, why has Maduro decided that 2023 is the year for annexation? The world knew about all these oil fields in 2015, and Maduro issued his decree 8 years ago as well. It seems strange that he would choose now to potentially launch his attack. Except it doesn't. Think about the state of global geopolitics right now. Instability reigns in much of the world. Since his initial 2015 decree, Maduro has watched as the United States withdrew from Afghanistan, creating instability in the Middle East in the process. He's seen China rise as one of the world's strongest military countries. He knows the US always has one eye turned toward Beijing. Plus, he's seen 2 wars start in 2 years, Russia's invasion of Ukraine, ironically following somewhat similar logic to Maduro's desired annexation of Guyana, might have been made somewhat more difficult by overwhelming support for Ukraine as received. But that support isn't necessarily a bad indicator for Maduro. He could look at what's happening in Ukraine and see a host of countries dedicating billions of dollars in resources that they then won't be able to use to provide similar support to Guyana. He'll also see the attention of the world being drawn not only to Ukraine but to Gaza. Israel's at war with Hamas and seems to be pulling no punches in its efforts to reclaim territory that it believes it owns. A precedent is being set. 2 countries in 2 years have launched wars to claim what they think is rightfully theirs, albeit under very different circumstances, and Maduro is seeing the opportunity. He can annex Guyana, he believes, because Guyana won't receive the same level of support afforded to other countries. Until the discovery of oil in Essequibo, it was barely on the global register, and even if the world does pay attention, as it might given the Essequibo's oil fields would give Guyana the largest crude oil reserves per capita, maybe they won't care enough to stop him. There's also the small matter of Venezuela's upcoming elections. In 2024, Maduro's position as president goes to a public vote, and he is very aware of the fact that he needs to win to keep his ambitions in Guyana alive. He's so aware of it, in fact, that he's turning back to the national populism that helped him secure the position in the first place to convince the Venezuelans that they have to keep him around. Without him, he'll argue, the country won't be able to claim back the territory and benefit from the riches produced by the oil that lies within. He's not being helped by the fact that the first presidential primaries held in Venezuela since 2012 turned out Maria Corina Machado as the clear frontrunner for opposition to his presidency. An industrial engineer and centrist who would move Venezuela away from Maduro's extreme socialist policies, Machado isn't shy of squaring up for a difficult fight. During her time in Venezuela's Congress, she was openly critical of Hugo Chavez and has continued that criticism now that Maduro is in charge. She has a powerful platform too. Under Maduro, Venezuela's inflation has skyrocketed, giving Machado plenty of ammunition to use in her presidential campaign. That's assuming her campaign happens at all. Well aware of the danger that Machado possesses, Maduro had expelled her from Venezuela's Congress and banned her from traveling abroad in 2014. She was also barred from running for public office. According to NBC and Axios, Maduro's claim that his opposition could field any candidate it wished has come back to bite him, as he clearly didn't expect Machado to run. And Axios says that he's quickly moved to work alongside an allied state comptroller to prevent Machado from running for any form of office until 2030. Maduro is trying to keep Machado out of the race, but he also wants to keep up appearances by holding what he can claim to be a fair and balanced election. That may force him to run against Machado despite his attempts to bar her from running. And regardless of whether it's Machado or somebody else, Maduro is going to need the ace in the hole of Essequibo annexation to bolster his support, given how terribly things are going for him on the economic front. Should Maduro succeed, he'll be confirmed for office until 2030, allowing him to extend his reign beyond that of even Chavez. But he is scared. His desire to cling to power has led to him both ridiculing the notion of being opposed in the election and negotiating with the opposition faction for an attempt to dissuade it from running. He's working together with his opposition to determine the basic conditions for the election and has released 6 political prisoners, which prompted the US to lift some of the sanctions placed against Venezuela. Maduro might try to claim that as his own victory. After all, it was he who so graciously worked with the US to get those sanctions lifted. Plus, without those sanctions in place, he could argue Venezuela's economy will strengthen. Add to that the oil money that would come from the Essequibo annexation, and Maduro has clearly established his presidential platform. Throw in a little alleged corruption, as we might have seen from the Essequibo referendum, and he's doing everything he can to stay in power. Successfully annexing Essequibo might be enough to tip the scales in his favor. If nothing else, it might embolden him to simply claim any election as invalid. After all, he'll suddenly have control of a lot of oil, giving him a bargaining chip in global geopolitics that'll make him more useful to keep around. So, how has Guyana responded to Maduro's latest threats? It's naturally terrified of the possibility of having its land stolen away from it, not only losing 2/3 of its territory, but all of the oil that comes with it. Its president Irfan Ali appeared on national television to tell Guyana's 800,000 people that he'd spoken to several world leaders, as well as the United Nations Secretary General, alerting them all to the threat. Ali has claimed that Maduro is defying a ruling by the International Court of Justice. According to The Guardian, that court said at the beginning of December that Venezuela must not take any action regarding its competing claim to Essequibo until the court can make a ruling on each country's claims. That's a process that would take years to complete, potentially allowing Guyana to benefit from its oil reserves, while Maduro has to sit and wait, or in the worst-case scenario, see himself ousted from Venezuela's presidency. Guyana's president has also sought reassurances from the Caribbean Community and Common Market, or CARICOM, to ensure that he'll have their support. And of course, he has placed the Guyana Defense Force, or GDF, on high alert, so they're as ready as they can be to try to repel invading Venezuelan forces. But that might not help. Guyana's army pales in comparison to Venezuela's, to the point where Guyana doesn't even have an entry on global firepower, which ranks militaries based on their strength. It's believed that the GDF numbers somewhere between 4,000 and 5,000, at least according to the Miami Herald, and has minimal equipment beyond small arms at its disposal. Venezuela is much stronger. According to Global Firepower, it ranks 52 out of the 145 countries it examines and has an active army of 137,000 people. A further 30,000 troops in reserve, with the country also having a strong paramilitary that numbers at 1.6 million. Even if Venezuela simply sends its active troops, it outnumbers the GDF at least 27-1. That's disregarding its far superior equipment. Venezuela has 229 war-ready tanks and 163 aircraft prepared to go right now, and the likelihood of better training. Simply put, Guyana isn't equipped to fend off a full-scale Venezuelan attack for very long. That's why it turned to the international community for help. But so far, the response has been fairly muted. The United States seems to take the approach of monitoring the situation rather than committing direct military aid. That makes sense given that the war hasn't broken out yet, and the US has at least committed to holding joint drills with Guyana as the border tensions grow. Those drills will likely be less about helping to train Guyana's Air Force as they will be about showing Venezuela that Guyana has the backing of some pretty powerful partners. Guyana will also be happy to know that the United States supports its claim over the Essequibo region. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken called Irfan Ali on December 6th to reiterate that stance. According to Al Jazeera, again, it's not a full commitment to support Guyana militarily if war breaks out, but the U.S. is making it clear that it will likely throw its full diplomatic weight into the conflict, at the very least placing pressure on Maduro at a time when he's trying to focus on winning an election. Guyana has also turned to one of its closest regional partners, Brazil. On December 7th, the Brazilian government announced that it would be sending troops. Unfortunately for Guyana, those troops won't enter the country itself to support the GDF. Rather, they'll be stationed at the border between Brazil and Venezuela in the city of Boa Vista. Brazil has said that they'll be sending more armored vehicles to that city. At first glance, this seems like a move that's focused more on self-interest than helping Guyana. After all, the troops aren't going to Guyana, making it seem like the Brazilians are simply protecting their own border in case Maduro gets any grand ambitions of trying to stretch his territory further. However, that's not likely the case. As the BBC points out, logistics are a major challenge for the Venezuelan army as it tries to enter Guyana. It's such a challenge that the terrain may make it impossible for Maduro to enter the disputed territory directly. Instead, he needs to cross a different border to get over the one that he needs. That different border is the one Venezuela shares with Brazil. By stationing troops on this border, Brazil is sending a message to Maduro that it'll stand in his way if he tries to use Brazil's territory to cross over. This is as close to direct military support as Guyana has received, with Brazil cleverly being able to make the argument that it's simply defending its own territory. While that might be true, it's also essentially creating a military blockade that would force the Venezuelan forces to fight through Brazilian forces to get into Guyana. That's the last thing Maduro wants, and thankfully it doesn't look like it'll come to that. Though he's made grand speeches about reclaiming Essequibo, Maduro has also agreed to a meeting with Guyana's president, Ali. That's according to Reuters, which says that it received a copy of the letter from the Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Ralph Gonsalves. The meeting was announced following a conversation between Maduro and Gonsalves, who also serves as the president pro tempore, or president for the time being, of CELAC. It was scheduled for December 14, 2023, and seemed to provide some reassurance for the people of Guyana, for now at least. With Representative Celso Amorim of Brazil also in attendance, Presidents Maduro and Ali came to an 11-point agreement that seemed to point in the direction of non-violent resolution, including promises against military intervention and incidents along the border. The next meeting on the matter is slated to take place in Brazil, though whether the waters will remain steady for the people of the embattled Guyana is an open question, largely dependent on whether or not you believe Maduro's promises of peace are sincere or just an act of clever timing that gives him the opportunity to plan for a more expedient invasion. So what do you think about the situation between Venezuela and Guyana? Do you see annexation in Guyana's future, despite the geopolitical issues it would cause? Or do you believe Maduro's doing a lot of talking without anything to back up his words? Tell us how you see the situation playing out in the comments section, and thank you for watching this video. Now go ahead and check out this video, or maybe this one instead.